For nearly 10 years, Todd Hofflander was missing without a trace. No body. No clues. No explanation. It was as if the mountains had swallowed him whole. Then, in 2020, a hunter made a discovery that changed everything. Hidden deep inside Idaho's remote wilderness were Todd's skeletal remains, and a camera that should never have worked again. Yet somehow, investigators recovered the photograph stored inside. The final image was unlike anything they expected. A blurry figure standing in the distance. Watching. Waiting. And taken only moments before Todd disappeared forever. To this day, nobody knows exactly what happened in the Seven Devils Mountains. But the answer may have been captured in Todd's last photograph. Imagine disappearing into the wilderness and staying lost for nearly a decade. Then imagine that when your remains are finally discovered, investigators recover a camera from beside your skeleton. A camera containing one final photograph. A photograph so unsettling that people would spend years arguing over what it really showed. Was it evidence of murder? A tragic accident? Or something far stranger lurking deep within Idaho's most unforgiving mountains? This is the haunting mystery of Todd Hofflander. In September of 2010, 39-year-old Todd Hofflander set out on what should have been a routine hunting trip. Todd wasn't reckless. He was exactly the opposite. Friends described him as an experienced outdoorsman who respected nature and understood the risks that came with venturing into remote wilderness. Before leaving, he carefully packed everything needed for several days in the mountains. Food. Camping equipment. Binoculars. A sleeping bag. A handgun loaded with 5 rounds. And accompanying him was his loyal hunting dog, Ruby. The destination was a rugged region of western Idaho known as the Seven Devils Mountains. Even the name sounded ominous. Towering cliffs, steep canyons, dense forests, and miles of isolated wilderness had earned the area a reputation as one of the most challenging landscapes in the American Northwest. For hunters, however, it was paradise. September marked peak mule deer season, and Todd planned to spend several days tracking game through the mountains. He wasn't alone. Joining him was a friend named Jeff. The two men expected to complete the trip in just a few days and return home with stories of the hunt. Instead, one of them would never come back. As they moved deeper into the wilderness, trouble began to develop. Todd's knee started causing serious pain. At first it seemed manageable. But with every mile, the injury worsened. The mountainous terrain was brutal even for healthy hikers. For someone struggling with an injured knee, it became a serious obstacle. Eventually, the two men reached an area known as McGathy Cow Camp. There, a decision was made. Todd would remain behind and rest while Jeff continued farther into the mountains. The plan seemed simple. Jeff would travel ahead, complete part of the hunt, then return to meet Todd at the agreed location. Nothing about the arrangement appeared unusual. At least not at the time. Before continuing, Jeff contacted his father, Steve, who joined him in the backcountry. Together they traveled deeper into the Seven Devils region. Meanwhile, Todd stayed behind with his supplies, his dog, and the expectation that his friend would soon return. But that reunion never happened. On September 28, Jeff and his father made their way back to the meeting point. Todd wasn't there. At first, they assumed he had wandered nearby. Maybe he had gone exploring. Maybe he was following game trails. Maybe he was simply out of sight. But as minutes turned into hours, concern began replacing confidence. The surrounding area was searched. Nothing. No sign of Todd. No sign of Ruby. No calls for help. No evidence of where he had gone. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. Realizing something was seriously wrong, Jeff reported Todd missing. Within hours, authorities launched an enormous search operation. Helicopters swept over valleys and ridges. Search and rescue teams combed through forests. Tracking dogs followed scent trails. Horse teams explored areas inaccessible to vehicles. Thermal imaging equipment scanned remote terrain. For days, rescuers searched relentlessly. Yet they found absolutely nothing. No campsite. No clothing. No equipment. No body. No clues. the wilderness had swallowed Todd Hofflander whole. And investigators were beginning to wonder if there was more to the story than a simple disappearance. As the search intensified, detectives shifted their focus toward the last people known to have seen Todd alive. That meant Jeff. When questioned by investigators, Jeff's behavior immediately raised concerns. His statements appeared inconsistent. Some answers seemed confusing. Others didn't fully align with the timeline investigators were attempting to establish. Authorities even administered a polygraph examination. The results only fueled suspicion. Investigators became increasingly uneasy. Yet despite the scrutiny, there was no physical evidence connecting Jeff to any crime. He maintained that he had no knowledge of what happened to Todd. No confession. No witnesses. No proof. Just growing questions. The situation became even more tense when Jeff's father strongly defended his son, insisting that investigators were looking in the wrong direction. But while detectives searched for answers, another voice emerged. Todd's wife. And what she revealed painted a troubling picture. According to Julie Hofflander, Jeff had a history of behavior that disturbed her. She claimed he often mocked Todd, treated people poorly, and displayed an aggressive personality. While those allegations did not prove involvement in a disappearance, they added another layer of unease to an already mysterious case. Investigators now faced a troubling possibility. Had Todd become the victim of foul play? Or were they wasting precious time chasing the wrong lead? Then, just when hope was beginning to fade, a shocking discovery changed everything. Not Todd. His dog. Ruby. And what happened next would only deepen the mystery. More than a week after Todd Hofflander vanished into the Seven Devils wilderness, a phone call reached the sheriff's office. It wasn't from a search team. It wasn't from a hunter. It was from a couple who had been hiking along Seven Devils Road. During their trip, they encountered a dog wandering alone in the mountains. At first, they didn't think much of it. But after seeing a missing person notice posted nearby, they realized something that made their stomachs drop. The dog looked exactly like Todd Hofflander's beloved hunting companion, Ruby. When Todd's family arrived to identify the animal, there was no doubt. It was her. Against all odds, Ruby had survived. The discovery should have been good news. Instead, it created an entirely new set of questions. The dog appeared tired and slightly dehydrated, but otherwise she was remarkably healthy. That made little sense. Days had passed since Todd disappeared. Ruby had been alone in one of the harshest wilderness regions in Idaho. Yet somehow she was alive. And even stranger, two important items were missing. Her collar. And the small red backpack she had been wearing when she left with Todd. Both had vanished. Nobody knew where they went. Nobody knew who removed them. And nobody could explain why. For investigators, Ruby represented the first real lead in the entire case. If anyone knew what happened to Todd, perhaps it was the dog who had been with him during his final moments. Search teams immediately attempted something that seemed promising. They brought Ruby back into the mountains. The hope was simple. Maybe she would guide rescuers to Todd. Maybe she would return to the place where she last saw her owner. Maybe she would reveal the missing piece of the puzzle. Instead, what happened deeply unsettled everyone present. As soon as Ruby entered the search area, her behavior changed dramatically. Witnesses described her as terrified. She shook uncontrollably. She jumped nervously from place to place. She whined, growled, and repeatedly acted as though she wanted to escape. It wasn't the behavior rescuers expected from a dog returning to familiar territory. It looked more like fear. The kind of fear an animal shows when it remembers something it never wants to experience again. Whatever Ruby had seen in those mountains, it appeared to have left a lasting impression. Investigators refused to give up. On October 6th, another major search operation was launched. Teams spread across the wilderness surrounding Todd's last known location. Valleys were checked. Ridges were examined. Remote trails were explored. Search dogs worked tirelessly. Still, there was nothing. No trace of Todd. No campsite. No weapon. No remains. Nothing. The Seven Devils Mountains continued guarding their secret. As weeks passed, desperation began replacing hope. Family members searched for answers wherever they could find them, even in places investigators normally avoid. One of those places was the world of psychics. Todd's wife, Julie, contacted a psychic from California and asked whether she could provide any insight into her husband's disappearance. The psychic claimed she could. According to her, Todd had been killed by a tall figure and buried near the base of a mountain somewhere within the Seven Devils region. It was a vague description. Yet when every other lead had failed, even the smallest possibility seemed worth investigating. Authorities searched the area that matched the psychic's description. Multiple teams were deployed. Dogs were brought in. The terrain was carefully examined. Nothing was found. The lead ended exactly where it began, with more questions. By late October, the reality became impossible to ignore. Weeks of searching had produced no answers. No evidence. No explanation. Eventually, officials made the painful decision to suspend active search operations. The case was no longer a rescue mission. It was becoming a mystery. One that seemed destined to remain unsolved. As winter arrived, the mountains fell silent. Months turned into years. The headlines faded. Search efforts ended. And Todd Hofflander slowly became another name on a long list of people who vanished without explanation. But the story wasn't over. Not even close. Because nearly 10 years later, the mountains finally gave something back. On April 27, 2020, a hunter was exploring a remote area near Bernard Creek, not far from the Seven Devils Mountains. What he discovered would instantly reopen one of Idaho's most baffling missing person cases. Scattered among the wilderness were human skeletal remains. Nearby lay several weathered items. A backpack. Camping equipment. And a camera. A camera that had spent almost a decade exposed to the elements. Most people assumed anything stored inside would be destroyed forever. But investigators weren't willing to take that chance. The remains were collected and sent for forensic examination. Meanwhile, specialists began working on the severely damaged camera. What they eventually recovered shocked everyone involved. Not only had data survived, photographs had survived. Images taken during Todd's final days in the wilderness. And among them was one picture that would ignite endless debate across the internet. A photograph some believed contained evidence of the truth. A photograph others called proof of nothing at all. A photograph taken shortly before Todd vanished forever. And when investigators finally confirmed that the skeletal remains belonged to Todd Hofflander, the mystery only became darker. Because the evidence raised far more questions than answers. In January 2021, after months of forensic analysis, the answer finally arrived. DNA testing confirmed that the skeletal remains discovered near Bernard Creek belonged to Todd William Hofflander. Nearly 10 years after he vanished into the Seven Devils Mountains, Todd had finally been found. But closure never came. Because finding Todd only created a new mystery. One that remains unsolved to this day. The condition of the remains made determining a cause of death nearly impossible. Years of exposure to harsh weather, wildlife, and the passage of time had erased most forensic evidence. Investigators could confirm who the remains belonged to. But they could not explain how he died. Or why. Or what happened during the final days of his life. The official answer was painfully simple. Unknown. And that's where the case stands today. Yet for thousands of people who have studied the mystery, several troubling questions refuse to disappear. The first question involves Ruby. How did she survive? Deep wilderness is unforgiving. Ruby wasn't a wild animal raised to live independently. She was a domesticated hunting dog accustomed to traveling alongside her owner. Yet somehow she emerged alive while Todd did not. Even more puzzling was the disappearance of her collar and red backpack. Those items were never recovered. Were they removed by Todd? By another person? Or did something happen that investigators never uncovered? No one knows. The second mystery concerns Todd's handgun. When he entered the mountains, he carried a pistol loaded with 5 rounds. As an experienced outdoorsman, Todd understood the dangers of the region. The Seven Devils area is home to predators, including mountain lions and black bears. A firearm wasn't just equipment. It was protection. Yet when his belongings were discovered nearly 10 years later, the pistol was missing. The weapon has never been found. Did Todd lose it? Did someone take it? Was it removed from the scene? The answer remains unknown. Then there's perhaps the most confusing question of all. Why did Todd leave McGathy Cow Camp? According to the original plan, he was supposed to remain there while waiting for Jeff's return. He had supplies. Food. Water. Shelter. A sleeping bag. Everything necessary to stay put. Leaving the camp would have exposed him to unnecessary risk, especially with an injured knee. Yet somehow he ended up far from the place where he was last seen. Something caused him to move. The mystery is figuring out what. And that leads to the fourth question. Distance. A lot of it. The location where Todd's remains were eventually found was miles away from the camp where he had reportedly stayed. The terrain between those points is rugged, steep, and exhausting even for healthy hikers. For someone suffering from severe knee pain, the journey seems extraordinarily difficult. Could Todd really have traveled that far alone? Or did something, or someone, help move him? That question lies at the center of every theory surrounding the case. Theory 1: Human involvement. The most controversial theory focuses on Jeff and his father. Supporters of this theory believe Todd may have died due to an accident or confrontation involving the two men. According to this idea, Todd's death was later concealed by transporting his body to a remote location where discovery would be unlikely. Advocates point to Jeff's suspicious behavior during questioning, the inconsistencies investigators reportedly noticed, and the unusual distance between Todd's last known location and where his remains were eventually found. However, there is one major problem. No evidence has ever connected Jeff or Steve to a crime. No witnesses. No forensic proof. No confession. Without evidence, the theory remains speculation. Nothing more. Theory 2: A tragic wilderness accident. Many experienced outdoorsmen believe the simplest explanation may be the most likely. Something happened after Todd left camp. Perhaps he became disoriented. Perhaps he attempted to relocate. Perhaps he followed Ruby or investigated something nearby. At some point, he may have suffered a fatal accident. The Seven Devils Mountains are notorious for unstable terrain. Loose shale rock, steep slopes, sudden falls, and unpredictable weather create dangerous conditions. A single mistake can become deadly. Supporters of this theory believe Todd may have been injured, stranded, and ultimately overcome by the wilderness. Ruby, meanwhile, may have survived by scavenging food and eventually finding her way toward civilization. It's a tragic explanation. But it requires no conspiracy. No unknown creatures. Only the harsh reality of nature. Theory 3: The creature in the mountains. And then there's the theory that transformed Todd's case from a missing person mystery into an internet legend. The photograph. Among the images recovered from Todd's damaged camera was one final picture. A blurry image showing what appears to be a large figure standing in the distance. The photograph is unclear. Grainy. Open to interpretation. Yet for many viewers, it immediately became the most chilling piece of evidence in the entire case. Some believe the figure is nothing more than a bear. Others see a person. And a small but vocal group believes it may show something far stranger. Bigfoot. According to this theory, Todd encountered an unknown creature while alone in the wilderness. Supporters point to reported Bigfoot sightings throughout the Pacific Northwest and claim the dense forests surrounding Bernard Creek would provide ideal habitat for a large, elusive animal. They also note Ruby's fearful behavior after being returned to the area. The psychic's description of a tall figure is sometimes mentioned as well. But there is one important fact. No evidence has ever proven the existence of Bigfoot. And no evidence directly links any creature to Todd's death. The theory remains exactly what it has always been. A possibility built on mystery rather than proof. More than 15 years have passed since Todd Hofflander entered the Seven Devils Mountains. His family finally received confirmation of what happened to him. But they never received the answer that mattered most. Why? Why did he leave camp? Why was his handgun never found? How did Ruby survive? And what really happened during those final days in the wilderness? Perhaps the truth died with Todd. Or perhaps it still waits somewhere among the ridges, valleys, and dark forests of the Seven Devils. A place where one wrong decision can change everything. A place where answers disappear as easily as people. And where, even today, the final photograph of Todd Hofflander continues to leave one haunting question behind. What was watching him before he vanished?